And the angel of God, which went before the camp of Israel, removed and went behind them. And the pillar of the cloud went from before their face and stood behind them. And it came between the camp of the Egyptians and the camp of Israel. And it was a cloud and darkness to them, but it gave light by night to these, so that the one came not near the other all the night. So the cloud is acting as a barrier between the Israelites and the Egyptians that are pursuing them. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and the Lord caused the sea to go back by a strong east wind all that night, and made the sea dry land, and the waters were divided. And the children of Israel went into the midst of the sea upon the dry ground, and the waters were a wall unto them on their right hand and on their left. So with the cloud behind them, the waters in front of them were cleared in order for them to be able to flee the Egyptians. In Exodus 15:4 from the King James Bible, Moses tells us that the name of this sea, or body of water as it should correctly be described, is the Red Sea. However, most modern Bibles have recognized the mistranslation of the original Hebrew text, which refers to the waters crossed by the Israelites as the Yam Suf, or the Sea of Reeds. Just as a side note, the actual Red Sea does feature in the Exodus account later in the journey, but for the sake of time I want to focus on the Sea of Reeds for this video. The Sea of Reeds was located in the Bala Lakes as it is known today. This large system of freshwater swamps was connected to the south of what was once the shallow lagoon of the Mediterranean Sea. This was connected at its southern end to the walls of the Ruhr border canal. It was the work of Professor James Hoffmeyer that identified the Bala Lakes as the Reed Sea of the Bible. His work was crucial in identifying the toponyms leading to and pinpointing the location of where the sea was parted. To keep this video short, I will list each location the Israelites arrived at prior to the crossing of the sea, without going into too much detail of each location, which probably deserve dedicated videos of their own. But God led the people about through the way of the wilderness of the Red Sea, and the children of Israel went up harnessed out of the land of Egypt. So they made their way to Succoth, which is Tel El Mashkuta. Mashkuta was probably shortened to Shkuta, which became Succoth in the Bible. Located in the eastern part of the Wadi Tumala, it is generally accepted by most scholars as being the location of biblical Succoth. There are also strategic reasons they may have camped here, as other slaves would have been able to join them from other areas in the Wadi, such as Pithom. And they took their journey from Succoth and encamped in Ephraim, in the edge of the wilderness. So now we have a larger group that have settled for Ephraim. Although Ephraim has never been conclusively identified, most scholars will place it near Lake Timsah. They could have been headed for the western starting point of the Way of Shur, which is located just north of the lake, which then headed across northern Sinai via the wells of Gafgafa and Hassana before reaching Kusaima, and then on to Beersheba, the same route taken by Abraham in his travels to Egypt. This is yet another place to camp where Israelite slaves may have been able to join Moses, for example from Kehun in Fayum. Kehun deserves a video of its own, which I may do next, as it's one of the towns that provides evidence of when the Exodus actually occurred. This was a 13th dynasty pyramid town that was suddenly abandoned by a Semitic population. Egyptologists have struggled to explain what happened, but as I've explained in other videos about Tel Daba, which is biblical Goshen, during the Middle Bronze Age to AB transition, which is at the end of the 13th dynasty, this Semitic population that I identify as the Israelites also abandoned their site. Now, through archaeology, we are able to give a reason for the abrupt departure and understand why the Bible has recorded them stopping at the locations that they have chosen. Also, we have to remember that the Bible is informing us that this is all happening around circa 1446 BC. But back to the Exodus route. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Speak unto the children of Israel, that they turn and encamp before Pi-hahiroth, between Migdol and the sea, over against Baal-zephon. Before it shall ye encamp by the sea. So right here, the Israelites are told to turn around and camp at Pi-hahiroth, or mouth of the canal, which as we know is where they will cross the Red Sea. So let's look at what happened. The route the Israelites attempted to travel was no longer accessible to them, but with satellite imagery and aerial photography, we now know why. On either side of Lake Timsah, connecting with the Bala Lakes in the north, which is the Red Sea, and the Bitter Lakes in the south, a pharaonic canal has been identified. 230 feet in width, it would have served as a barrier to anyone wishing to leave or enter Egypt that wasn't through either the start of the Way of Shore or the fortified Way of Horus, which biblically we know as the Way of the Philistines, which leads along the Mediterranean coast of Sinai further to the north. Egyptologists believe this eastern frontier canal is mentioned in several Middle Kingdom papyri, constructed in either the reign of Merikare of the 10th dynasty, just before the start of the Middle Kingdom at the beginning of the Middle Bronze Age, or by Amenemhat I, founder of the 12th dynasty, which, as you know, is when I believe the Israelites entered Egypt, tying in with what I mentioned earlier about the Exodus happening at the end of the 13th dynasty. This canal was most probably in use going into the New Kingdom, as it's depicted in the Karnak release of Seti I, where he returns from a campaign in Canaan, passing over the canal bridge with the crocodile-infested waters separating fortresses on either bank. Understanding this, the Bible makes a lot more sense as to why the Israelites had to turn back. Following along the route parallel to the canal heading towards northeast, they would eventually find themselves right where we started this video, trapped on three sides between the Mediterranean Sea to their north and the Reed Sea. The Reed Sea was connected at its southern end to the canal that they had been following since Etham, trying to look for a location to cross. From here, the military road would have only have been a mile away, where an Egyptian army would be able to reach them within 3 hours. The Israelites have effectively boxed themselves in, leaving the Egyptians room to ambush them. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, king of Egypt, and he pursued after the children of Israel. And the children of Israel went out with a high hand, but the Egyptians pursued after them, all the horses and chariots of Pharaoh, and his horsemen and his army, and overtook them encamping by the sea beside Pi-hahiroth before Baal-zephon. Another way in which we can use the Bible to make sure that we have the correct location is by reading Exodus chapter 10 and verse 19. And the Lord turned a mighty strong west wind, which took away the locusts and cast them into the Reed Sea. There remained not one locust in all the coast of Egypt. A west wind blowing from Goshen would have pushed the locusts in the direction of northern Sinai, which would have pushed them 25 miles away to the only body of water present at that time, which was the Bala Lakes or Reed Sea, which is where we have the Israelites trapped in from Exodus chapter 14, verses 8 and 9. So that was a very brief explanation of every location on the Exodus route up until the point Moses would part the Reed Sea. I've probably spoken about each location in more detail in past videos, so feel free to watch them after watching this video for more information. But now we get to the main topic of the video, which is, would it even be scientifically possible that Moses could part the Red Sea? Colin Humphreys is a professor of materials science at Cambridge University and has described the moving or pushing back of large bodies of water as wind set down. He has completed model experiments to witness the effects on a laboratory scale. He has also been able to show real-life examples of where this has happened. On Lake Erie, wind set-down caused the waters to recede between Toledo, Ohio in the west and Buffalo, New York in the east. Now, when Colin Humphreys is asked about the parting of the Reed Sea, he doubts that this could have happened in northwest Sinai. However, he was probably unaware of the Tulloch report, which conforms with his wind set-down model. It was Carl Drews, a software engineer at the National Center for Atmospheric Research, who used computer modeling software that could calculate the effect of wind set-down to find out its effect on the Reed Sea. With a 62 miles per hour eastern wind, he was able to demonstrate that the northern part of the Bala Lake systems, where it converges with the saltwater lagoon of the Mediterranean, would have been pushed northwest, exposing the lake bed, showing it would be possible that the Reed Sea could be divided by a strong eastern wind. And the Egyptians pursued, and went in after them to the midst of the sea, even all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen. And it came to pass that in the morning watch the Lord looked unto the host of the Egyptians through the pillar of fire and of the cloud, and troubled the host of the Egyptians, and took off their chariot wheels, that they drave them heavily, so that the Egyptians said, Let us flee from the face of Israel, for the Lord fighteth for them against the Egyptians. And the Lord said unto Moses, Stretch out thine hand over the sea, that the waters may come again upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen. And Moses stretched forth his hand over the sea, and the sea returned to his strength when the morning appeared, and the Egyptians fled against it. And the Lord overthrew the Egyptians in the midst of the sea. And the waters returned and covered the chariots and the horsemen, and all the hosts of Pharaoh that came into the sea after them. There remained not so much as one of them. Carl Drews would later go on to produce a model of what the process would have looked like at certain intervals throughout the night. After 7 p.m., we see the waters begin to depart. At around 10 p.m., the waters would have been withdrawn to the north and to the south. By 3 a.m., the waters would have been pushed furthest to 5,000 yards apart. At 8 a.m., the last of the Israelites would have crossed over, pursued by the Egyptians. Notice how it would have only taken 6 more minutes for the waters to come crashing back down on top of the Egyptian army. This video was a little longer than I wanted it to be, but it was important that I gave at least a brief explanation as to how I came to understand where it was that Moses parted the Red Sea. This was basically the beginning of the Exodus story, and I will complete this brief overview of where they stopped along the way in a future video, so please subscribe so that you won't miss the notification of when that comes out. Please like and share the video with anyone you believe that needs to hear this, and I'll see you in the next video. All praises to the Most High.